So today we're going to be talking about some cool configurations. Jeremy and I both love geeking out on configurations, and we often chat each other all day long about configurations and collaborate on making the system do very exciting and fun stuff. A little bit about me. I am a senior HCM consultant. I'm coming up on a decade of Infor Lawson. Hey, John. Infor Lawson S3 experience with global HR and talent management as well. I recently became an Infor certified landmark developer to prove that I can actually do configuration console. Jeremy, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Jeremy Stoltzfus, senior technical consultant. Been in the Lawson space for over 15 years now. Started version 7 back in 2003, I think. So when we were having that conversation earlier. Strong focus in IPA, of course, and then a lot of configuration console work recently. And as Jackie mentioned, her and I, we tend to ping each other all day long, almost every day, with some challenges. We've often said there's very little that we haven't been able to figure out. We've gotten some unique challenges brought to us. So between the two of us, we put our heads together. We usually come up with something. So, and John Drexel, go ahead and say hi. You're a moderator here for today.
Yeah, I'm John Drexel. I'm a project coordinator at RPI. Started about 3 months ago. And yeah, I'll be proctoring today. So if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat and I'll make sure to read them for you.
Thanks, John.
Yep.
All right, so today we're going to talk about some configuration concepts. So Jeremy's going to walk us through the types of configurations that we will then demo for you. And we'll move into the examples section where we'll actually show you some of these configurations that we've done. We won't be in the system, but we have some screenshots and we can talk through them theoretically too. And if you have any questions or challenges for us, feel free to chat them in the chat box and we'll try to think on our feet here.
So, the content that we're going to cover here is, and I know I had the question asked earlier, some of my favorite configurations. So this is it, right? This is these things. And really, when we get into these advanced configuration concepts, solving those really kind of tough business challenges that we get, user constraints, derived fields, derived fields, and user relations. So these are all things that are available in Configuration Console, but take a little bit more in-depth knowledge of your application, of your business classes, and that data to be able to really kind of pull all of that together. So we'll dive into each one of those as we go through some of the examples that we have here for you. You're muted, Jackie.
Thank you.
There you go.
So the first example we're going to talk about is Social Security, or actually field masking in general. So a common request that we get is to mask the whole or the first 5 digits of the Social Security number so that you can see maybe the last 4 in employee space or in the listing in administrator space. And then when you click into it, maybe you can see the rest of the social. But so this is a pretty common request we get. The top screenshot is showing you delivered, and then the bottom screenshot shows you the configured version of it. And to do this, actually, can you hit next for me, please? To do this, actually, rather than modifying the existing field that sits out there, we're creating a new field and swapping them out. So we had to create a derived field to say return this many stars plus digits 6 through 9 of the identification number. So this way, it's going to pull, the derived field pulls the information that's put into the system and spits it back out, but we're asking it to also spit back out some stars. So this is a pretty common one, super simple, and it allows you to hide some sensitive data. And I think I might have another example for bank details. So bank details, this is one that Jeremy and I worked together really hard on, and Jeremy was able to crack the code here. But bank details is another one that often clients want to hide because sensitive information, right? And an employee can log, maybe they're using a shared computer and they can log in and maybe leave something up. So we want to hide that information. But the problem with bank details is the account number can be any link. While the social security number has a specific link, it's easy to say return digits 6 through 9 for the social security number. An account can be, I think, up to 40 characters or less. So we weren't able, for a long time, we struggled to try to figure out how to make it return only the last 4, when the last 4 digits could be digits 6 through 19 or 20 to 23. So again, the screenshot at the top is delivered. The screenshot at the bottom is the configured. You hit next for me, please. We actually had to end up creating a very long derived field that essentially is saying, if there are 40 digits, give me digits 37, 38, 39, and 40. If there are 39 digits, give me digits 38. I can't read.
37, 38, 39.
Yeah. So we had to put basically 40 statements down so that it would accommodate all possible lengths of an account number here. And it works beautifully. It returned only the last 4, and the client was very happy with that.
Joe's asking here, is the derived field generated on the server side or the client side?
Client,
So
right?
derived fields are evaluated real time as they're being called. So it's all done on the server, returned by the server.
And Jesse's asking, can something like this be done dynamically by getting the length of the account number?
We could not, we tried that first. We tried to do a command that said return length of the account number and then reference that field into the derived field. I forget exactly what we ran into, but we were not able, I don't know if it was the count that was the problem or referencing the count.
Yeah, I think I was referencing the count as a variable. So if you're looking at this, like account number sub 37, sub 38, sub 39, it didn't let us put another variable in the subscript to basically to kind of dynamically figure that out.
Yeah. But that was our first thought too.
Yep. All right, switching gears a little bit here to the talent acquisition side. One of the things that I kind of discovered, and I think Jackie, you probably know this too, this is where we get a lot of unique requests, probably some of the more challenging ones. Let's say you've gone through all of the work to set up your jobs and positions with your skills, your education requirements, and all things like that, so that all the information all gets pulled into your job postings. So here I have an example of a particular job that has 4 skills listed. When you're creating your job posting template, you have the option to include components from the job, include components from the position. And what it does in the job posting, it just kind of matches it. So the top screen, the top screenshot here is what happens dynamic or automatically out of the box with the delivered. And you can see it's, I mean, it's nice and it gives that basic information. The bottom screenshot takes that to the next level. So, right, the skill is called experience and benefits. But if I jump back to the specific skill that's on the right-hand side here, yeah, it's the description you can see is what gets pulled in. But we also wanted to say, hey, your equivalent experience. So in lieu of benefits experience. And that sentence there. So, and you can see that all gets pulled into here, as well as the number of specific years required for that particular experience. So how is that one done? So again, derived fields, where, and this is, taking it up a notch, right? Where we're taking, we're actually looping through. So in this derived field code, we're actually, LPL code, we're actually looping through starting at the business class job, looping through all of the related competencies and skills. So in this case, it's a one-to-many relationship between job and job competency and skill. Pulling those all in, looping through and basically just appending them all to one variable at the end. There's a little bit of there's the if statement here that's basically, hey, is this my first one, or am I appending to an existing data that I've already got? And a couple of notes to take away here. My field type is defined as rich text, and that allows me to put some HTML code in, such as the ampersand bool for a bullet point. So again, if I go back, you can see the beginning, I've got a bullet point as opposed to just an asterisk. And then I'm building out that sentence. So each essential skills, the field essential skills experience years minimum is where that 7 gets pulled in, and we're bringing the description. If the skill is marked as essential on the setup, then we add the word required. So we're really just building that out. Now, in the job posting itself, when you're pulling that information in, the delivered variables are what's available to you. So if you're familiar with those templates, email templates or posting templates, there's a finite set of variables to pick from. But there is the LPL code down below here at the bottom, where you can see I've put in an experience heading, and then in the brackets, you can preface your derived field with that LPL colon. That actually instructs the system to say, hey, go out and get a field that's not one of the delivered variables that's as part of that, and then use it.
We have a question from Jesse here. It says, will we be able to share the enhanced job posting code snippet by email?
Yeah, actually, I think all of the presentations will be available post-event, but we'll make sure that you get a hold of that.
Me again. So now we're going to talk about conditionally displaying fields. And you can conditionally display fields based on information that already exists in the system, or information that you're typing into that form in real time. So if you type in a value and you want that value to cause other fields to display, you can do that as well. I think in our example here, so what we're doing is we're basing the assignment end date off of whether an employee or a resource is a contractor or not. So what you can see here is my condition. I created a contractor condition on the work assignment business class to say, the condition is true when the employee's relationship to organization is contractor. Go ahead and hit next for me, please. And what, I think that's a good look at the slide. Anyway, we put go ahead and click play. This is a video and it might take a second to run, but we put on the form, display this field when this condition is met. So Clara Abbott here is a contractor, and I'm going to go and transfer the employee, I believe. And when we click transfer, it's going to show that the assignment end date is an available field. And then on the next slide, we have a transfer for an employee with the same logic on the form. And when we try to transfer this employee, oh wait, I think this might be the same video. I think you have to click again. I think click plays and then, yeah, this one. So this is an employee, and when we do the same transfer action for the employee, the assignment expiration date does not show up, and it's because it's referencing that relationship to organization condition that we already have on the employee. And hopefully this won't take long, but you probably already believe me, but just to watch the video. And then what we're going to look at next is dynamically displaying fields based on dynamically requiring fields based on previously entered text. All right. So on the next slide, sorry. So now we're talking about actually requiring the fields. So we're going to use that same condition. So we're looking for when a resource is a contractor. Go ahead, next. We're going to put on the form a constraint. So the constraint is if they are a contractor, if that Dudas contractor condition is met, we also have to enter the appointment end date or the work assignment end date. Or if the contractor condition is not met, then it's okay that that date is not entered. And then that little text that go ahead and hit next, please get that video feed up. But that little text that I have underneath of it is the warning response or the message that comes when that condition is not met. So again, this is a transfer, but now it's also requiring me to enter that information. So I think, who is this? This is our contractor. There's my condition showing that she is a contractor. I'm leaving the assignment expiration blank, and it gives me that warning to let me know that I need to, well, that looks awfully blurry. I don't know if it's blurry for everybody, but when I maximize my video, it's blurry. But anyway, it's giving me that warning to say, go ahead and hit next, Jeremy, and we'll look at it from the employee point of view. But just the warning to say that I need to actually enter an assignment expiration date for that employee. And this, again, this is the employee. The condition is showing as false. So that field isn't even available because of our previous condition to make it only display when they are a contractor. And you can see I can also now submit the action without entering that data. So constraints, conditionally requiring stuff for a while, we didn't think it was possible, and we jumped for joy when we figured out the way to do it. And we can also conditionally require based on who's entering information on the form.
Did we skip one, or we got that? No, we got that one. Okay. Job requisition approvals. So what this is so one thing that I've discovered is that job requisition approvals are probably some of the more complicated approval flows that I've written. Just with the number of levels and just some complexity around it. There's a lot of visibility into these things. People want to know where they're sitting, where they're going for approval, and things like that. I ran into an issue where a client, they wanted to lock down their approval structure and basically not allow it to just not allow their hiring manager to pick whoever they want. But the problem was their hiring manager as a hiring manager, they weren't aware of where these approvals were going. So before they actually submitted it. So what I ended up doing was creating a bunch of derived fields. And that's all the fields that are on the right there that you see. And that's all based off the hiring manager. So for this particular client, the approval structure is all derived off of the hiring manager or some information about the position. So the code here, this is on the job requisition information form. So when that hiring manager is selected, and the value may change, and I will point out that like when you enter your position on that form, it will automatically populate the hiring manager. But so that hiring manager changes, and what we're doing here is we're triggering a refresh on all of those derived fields so that it goes out and reevaluates those real time as that value is being updated. So looking at some of these derived fields here and how they're built out, the top one is pretty complex. We're basically bouncing up the supervisor chain until we find, in this case, we're looking for the director, which in this particular organization, the supervisor level was defined as level 40. So we're bouncing up that chain until our supervisor type is 40, less than or equal to 40. And you can see it's slowly kind of working its way up, and this actually goes, I think, 3 more levels, but basically referencing the relation to itself, to a hiring manager, to itself, to a, and on and on. So this is where, knowing your data structure, knowing the business classes and how they are related to one another. This was all used built-in relationships, so no custom relations here for this one. But it gets pretty complicated. I see a question of noticed a slowdown when using these heavily derived fields. I have not significantly. I think it would depend on how many of these derived fields you're evaluating at any given point in time. For this particular application that I was coding out, it seemed to be pretty quick in how it rendered. So again, those are derived fields are all evaluated at the time that they're needed. So if you're adding a record and that particular form doesn't display those derived fields, they're not being calculated at all. A couple of the others here. So I've got the one in the bottom where that hiring manager is a director. Again, just some logic. So returning a true or a false so that I know, hey, my hiring manager is a director. Why do I care? Because my approval structure goes to a director for approval. But if the hiring manager is the one submitting the requisitions, they shouldn't be approving it, right? So I'm building out conditions to build out my approval logic right within that requisition record. And then just a different example here, this finance business partner field on the lower right-hand side, that's actually returning the person responsible that's defined on the HR organization unit. So that's all set up from the position that's put on the requisition. So it just kind of all flows back into that. So ultimately, what that looks like then is the lower right-hand corner shows the final result, right? Bringing all of that data, all of those derived fields in and displaying it right on the screen. And, that one condition that I just mentioned here about the hiring manager is a director. So I can see right now, from the time that I put in my position number on the requisition, all of this information is immediately displayed. So it bounces all the way up to the executive so that I can see who that approval structure is. And, oh, by the way, the hiring manager is me, Mary Doe, who is also a director. So I'm going to skip that approval level. So it gives that feedback right away to that. And in this particular one, the parent supervisor could also be a director. And so if that was the case, there's another conditional field that displays that and shows an appropriate message as well. The code in the left and the middle is just the LPL code for the job requisition information form, where it's just displaying all of those information. So displaying all of those user fields and how they get laid out there. Jackie?
Sorry, I think there's a minor delay.
Oh, okay.
I heard you stop talking, but then I was waiting for my slide to come up, so I didn't jump in too soon. All right, so the next configuration I'm going to talk about is limiting the values within a select list. So the example that I have here is we want to display certain action reasons on an action form depending on who has selected the form. So this came from a real live client request where they wanted talent acquisition to only see specific talent acquisition action reasons, and they wanted HRIS or whoever else might enter this action to see other action reasons. And so what the screenshots we have here show my actor. I have the recruiter ST role, and the text here is saying on the form, we're using a constraint to say when the actor, when the person who's actually on that form has the roles recruiter ST and a condition or a Boolean field that I put on the action reason has been checked, only those values will display. Otherwise, if the actor does not have that role, only display the action reasons that don't have that field checked. So sorry, Jeremy, I got another video for you to run through here. But since some of these kind of are conditions. It's good to see them happen in real time. So this is me as the recruiter in right now, and I've selected the action reason dropdown, and I'm only going to be able to see the TA transfer action. On the next video that I'm going to make Jeremy click, we're going to be showing, I've switched out my security for that video, and it will show that all of the action reasons are available to me. And again, this is done using a constraint. So there's two different ways we've used a constraint here. One was to conditionally require. Yeah, I think you can click next. So yeah, same logic. Now we're seeing I don't anymore have that recruiter role. And then the video will show under the dropdown, I have all of the action reasons to select from. And so like I was saying, two different ways to use a constraint here, right? The first way that I showed you a few slides ago was to conditionally require a field. And this way is now to conditionally display what's available in a dropdown. I've used this for other clients. One of my clients wanted to, in the goal management module, wanted to tie together goal types and goal categories. As delivered, they really have nothing to do with each other, but they wanted to use goal categories as sort of an umbrella classification of types and have certain types relate to those categories. And so this is where we discovered how to make that happen using a constraint. And then again, I've gotten this request, like I mentioned here, for action reasons as well. All right, thanks, Jeremy.
I have a quick question if you want to go to this real quick. It says, any recommendations for building a full workflow using config console, i.e. something like a request new item?
Do you want to take that one, Jackie, or do you want me to?
So sure. So in configuration console, you can use the delivered actions to create an action extension. So an action extension is taking the existing action and modifying it to what you want it to be. You can also create one brand new from scratch. I've also created instance actions via configuration console, and an instance action is one that does not require approval behind the scenes. As far as recommendations, I don't know, Jeremy, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, so a couple options, like Jackie said. If it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to build something out and trigger an approval process, then probably building a custom action, a brand new action. When you do that, you can then call a process flow and have that be sent out for approvals. Or if you use something that's what Jackie referred to as the instance action, you can actually write the LPL code, take in parameters, and then write the LPL code to update that record directly and not have it go through as an action request, but it really just does that instant action, updating the database right away.
And you can get fancy and tie them together and make one action kick off another action as an exit rule.
I believe, so Kathy asked if we'll write down the answers. So all of these sessions will be recorded or are being recorded, and so you can always go back and play them back.
Or if you want to just re-ask, I don't remember what the question was, but if you want to retype it.
Somebody said they were asking about the answer or recommendations for building a full workflow.
Oh, it was the word, okay.
Okay, so you guys have stuck with it this long. Jesse, to answer your question earlier, this is probably one of my favorite configurations that I've ever done. This is also about 6 levels deep to finally get the solution to what we needed it to do. Really just to showcase this, to highlight the power of configuration console and what you can do. You just got to get creative and really think about how you get to that data. So this came up for a particular client where they'd be submitting actions on employees. So submitting terminate actions on an employee. But later, and they would do this a couple of months in advance. Excuse me. But later, a new opportunity within the organization came up for that employee, and they wanted to transfer that employee instead. But they didn't realize that there was already a pending termination out there. And so what happened was the transfer was entered and put through, but the termination took effect before the transfer could take effect. So then they had to reverse and back out data, and especially when you're syncing with S3, then that becomes a big history correction error, excuse me.
I was going to say, can I get you some water?
Yeah, can you get me some glass of water, please? So ultimately, this was the final solution and what that looked like. So when we would bring up the transfer form, it showed on screen right at the very top in red, hey, you've got a pending terminate action for this employee. Oh, and by the way, here's the work unit number. So that this was nothing more than to facilitate communication. This particular client, the actions were all generally done by a central staffing office. And so then they would follow up and try to determine who created the initial action. But at least it gave them that heads up to say, hey, you've got this out here. So how do we get there? Well, so you've got action requests that are related to work units. You have employees that have action requests against them, but there's no relation to a specific action, just in general. So ended up building a couple user relations, derived fields, conditional forms, and form configurations. So this is the full suite of products here. Let me know if I go too fast, because it does start to get a little confusing, especially if you're not familiar with the object models here. A lot of code here, a lot of things going on. Let me kind of walk through them one by one. So the upper left-hand corner, this is actually building a relationship. So if you think about it, the work unit is already related to the work unit variable table, but what we were specifically looking for was a specific variable. And so what these derived fields ended up doing is, if you look at the action employee field, I am looking for this specific work unit variable called employee. And that's the value that I'm returning in this particular field. Because on that action request business class, this is where that data model is tricky, because all the parameters for your action request are stored in XML fields behind the scenes, and you can't really get to them. So you can't see a specific action and there's not a specific field just for employee. Same with HR organization and the effective date. These are all variables that are passed into the process flow, and so we're pulling them out of there. So deriving those fields on that action request business class. Then we take the employee business class, and now we're going to relate it to the action request business class, specific for a specific action. So we've got the status of 2, which I believe I believe that's in progress or pending. And then we're looking at the field business class on the action request is a value of employee. The business action is terminate, and then our condition is where we're using those derived fields, actor, HR organization, and action employee, where we're bringing those values in from our condition. And then we've got a couple more fields here. The top left is a conditional field that's basically saying, hey, instance count of pending term rel. So that is the relationship between that we just looked at right here. So pending term rel. How many return true or false if the pending term rel, if there's at least one record there. And then the same thing, we've got a pending term count, which actually returns that specific number. And then the pending terminate work units is where we actually are building the string of work units. Now, in this particular case, there could have been multiple actions for this particular employee, just because of how their business process was. And so this gets all built out and lists then the specific work unit that's associated with each one. And then ultimately what it came down to was, here's the LPL. So we're just adding those text there, which is, so this is how you can put additional text on your form and use variables within the context of your data to actually show that data. So here, employee.pending terminate count, and then says 1, which returns a value of 1 in my example here, and then the text pending terminate action exists. And then we're also adding the work units, where it's pulling in that derived string as well. So a lot of layers there, a lot of just thinking about it and thinking about how your data all relates and is all related, and how you can pull it all together using the tools within Configuration Console. Any questions?
It's like the ultimate flex, Jeremy.
What's that?
That's the ultimate flex configuration.
Yeah, it took me a while to figure out, but it definitely is one of my favorites.
We do have a question from Jesse. In this example, will the work units display more than one if they exist?
Assuming if there's more than one action against this, yes, it would show multiple work units, and that's this derived field here that basically is looking for how many terminates are. And again, it seems weird that there would be multiple terminate actions, but it was part of their business process, because I think their terminates, this particular client, I think they went through 3 terminate actions to get to the term final phase of it. So yeah, if there was 2 of those terminates already in progress, and it was all based on, Jackie, do you remember it was based on like some of the auto time record fields and how they had to populate?
Right, doing their final payout.
Yeah, exactly. So if there was 2 of those terminate actions already completed, 2 of the 3, then it would show, yes, it would show both work units.